Hello and welcome to BirdNoise, an Eagles fan podcast. Today I will be talking about the new Eagles offensive and defensive coordinators. I know they got hired really early on in the week, but it's been a fairly busy week for me, and so I'm just now able to get to this video and talk about this. So the new offensive and defensive coordinators, Kellen, Vic Fangio. We're going to talk about Vic Fangio first. I don't know how I feel about this move. I don't think I'm a huge fan of getting Vic Fangio as our DC. I was really hoping that the rumors weren't true, but then it was announced that they were signing him to a deal. The Eagles bested Vic Fangio's defense last year with a 31-17 victory, and I think I would feel a lot better if the Eagles had hired a younger defensive coordinator. A lot of teams around the league are doing that, and so I would like it if the Eagles would stay with the times and not go behind the times. I'm willing to give him some time, see if he can figure things out with his defense. And after the performance we saw against the Bucks, I mean, things can only go up, right? Like, that was a horrendous performance. So we should be able to see improvement almost immediately. Now, as a team last season, the Dolphins had 438 points scored against them in all their games combined. This includes both offensive and defensive scores. But on average, the Dolphins gave up about 24.3 points per game. The largest amount of points that was scored on the Dolphins was their shellacking by the Ravens when the Ravens scored 56 points on them. Vic Fangio, he was also the head coach of the Broncos for 2 years, and he did his best with the Broncos. I just want to say that. He did his absolute level best. But the Broncos are just in some form of football insanity right now. They cannot find either a good head coach or a good quarterback. Like, they're just stuck with either one or the other. But I don't hate this move. I'm not a giant fan of it. Really, I just feel like we could have hired a lot better for coaching staff. But I'm willing to see how this goes for the Eagles. And let's be honest here. The Matt Patricia, Sean Desai era was a complete joke by the end of the season. There was no defense, if anything. Now for the offense. Kellen Moore. Well, we had to go against this offense twice a few years ago. He started his offensive coordinator career as the offensive coordinator for the Dallas Cowboys. He was there for 4 years, and he got some head coaching interviews, but he never got a head coaching job. The Dallas Cowboys offense was always really good during the regular season. Always a little concerned when somebody from the Cowboys comes to the Eagles because of playoffs. But with Moore as the offensive coordinator for the Cowboys, over 4 years, the Cowboys scored an average of 27.7 points per game. This is per NBC Sports Philadelphia. To put it in perspective, this year, the Eagles scored an average of 25.5 points per game per ESPN. Also, their defense allowed an average of 25.2 points per game, which meant that we were barely beating our opponents, which is accurate, actually, when I think about it. But the Eagles... And the difference between the Eagles last year and the Cowboys of 4 years is 2 points. Now, the most points the Eagles scored this season was 38, which is not great, but it's not bad. Sometimes you'll have a game where you can score more points. The Chargers were a mess this year. I don't really want to look at the Chargers as like an explanation of how Kellen Moore does on offense, but you kind of have to. However, we can look at it with like a little asterisk next to it because that head coach was, I don't know what he was. Yeah, Brandon Staley, terrible head coach. Sorry, but he is. And then Justin Herbert got hurt towards the end of the year. So the Chargers just had a mess on their hand. The Cowboys, when Kellen Moore was the offensive coordinator for the Cowboys, they had a lot more options to get the ball to than the Chargers did last year. The Chargers last season averaged 20.4 points per game. I really don't think that it's a great example of Kellen Moore as an OC, but we kind of have to look at it. I do think that Kellen Moore has a really good offensive mind, and we can really use another really good offensive mind to help Nick Sirianni with his coaching abilities to lessen the load of Nick Sirianni, make him less worried about having to coach the offense and the whole team, let him focus just on the whole team, let the offensive and defensive coordinators work on their own. And I think that these moves can help the Eagles, especially with the Kellen Moore move. I feel bad for the Cowboys because now they lost their really good offensive coordinator to the Chargers last year. Now he's with the Eagles. And then yesterday the Commanders announced that they are hiring Dan Quinn. So the Cowboys have lost two really good coaching candidates, and now they have to find replacements for those. But the Eagles, desperate need of a change of scheme, change of plans, change of offense. I think this is a good, fresh look. Really glad that we didn't do the same thing last year and just hire in-house, because it doesn't end well generally when teams do that. And so I'm really glad that we have decided against doing that this year, and we hired Kellen Moore and Vic Fangio. So those are my thoughts on the new Eagles, DC, and OC. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and feel free to like and subscribe. This has been Bird Noise. I'm Dominic Estes, and remember, fly Eagles, fly.